Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Sustainable Supply Chain Podcast. My name is Tom Raftery, and with me on the show today, I have my special guest, Lenny. Lenny, welcome to the podcast. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you very much, Tom. Lenny Marano. I'm president of the Americas for Lectra. We are a technology solutions provider to the apparel, furniture, automotive, and other industrial value chains. We provide equipment and software from planning all the way through production with post services as well as industrial intelligence behind it.
Seems like a diverse set of customers, Lenny. How does that work?
It's very interesting. When you look at all of our customer base, they have one thing in common. They all work with flexible materials. So when you take a look at the shirt that you're wearing, the chair that you're sitting on, the car that you ride in to work on, the airbags in it, your sofas at home, the Boeing 787 that you fly around in, everything has a series of patterns that are sewn together. And that's kind of the thread part of the pun that ties all of our market segments together. So we started as a company that was in really CAD CAM, the design of those patterns that get sewn together, and then the machines that cut those patterns before you bring them to the sewing machines. But we've evolved into a technology company that serves all aspects of the value stream. So we have a platform that has a product lifecycle management tool, a product information management tool. We have competitive intelligence tools. We have a traceability platform that we acquired 2 years ago that gives our apparel customers visibility from the field all the way to the consumer. We have a marketplace management tool for online e-com. So we've really diversified out of that CAD CAM market to be a real integrated solutions provider to the markets that we serve.
Interesting. When I was a kid, my mother used to make her own clothes. I remember going into a shop in the city centre, Rocha stores. She would buy patterns in there in packets, and she'd open them up at home and spread them out on the floor, spread them out on yarn, and then along the kind of dotted lines, she'd cut out the yarn according to the pattern, and then she'd sew them all together in her sewing machine. So that's you guys were making the patterns, the kind of patterns that my mother bought. Is that it?
Sure. Yeah. I don't know if going back then, if it was digitized or CAD based, but yes, in
It was
concept,
paper based.
it was paper based, right? Yeah. So we were on the CAD side. When that process became digitized, that's where Lectra came in. Actually, Lectra itself means in French, it's a combination of two words, to read and write, and it's to really write those patterns in a digitized way. So.
Oh, fascinating. And how did the industries shift from analog to digital transform your view on kind of the potential for innovation in textile manufacturing? Was there a pivotal moment that guided you to focus on digital transformation?
I think there was, if you look at it, there was really four pivotal moments. You may have heard the term Industry 4.0.
Yep.
And, you know, Industry 4.0 was a term that really came out of Germany to talk about the fourth industrial revolution.
Yeah.
And when you look at the first three, it's very easy to equate to the textile business. The first industrial revolution was the mechanized loom. The second industrial revolution was electrifying the sewing machine.
Yep.
The third was using computers to control equipment. And if you look at Lectra, right, we're celebrating our 50th year now. They say the third industrial revolution started at about 1970, and our first cutter was sold in 1968. So we led the way into the third industrial revolution. And then in 2007, before Industry 4.0 or IoT was even a thing, we started connecting all of our systems to the internet. And that's allowed us to accumulate data, to understand customer patterns of usage, how they're utilizing our machines in their production, but also be very predictive in the way that we maintain and support our machines.
Okay. Nice. And of course, this is the Sustainable Supply Chain podcast. So, what does any of that have to do with sustainability?
Well, actually, it's sustainability is the thread throughout all of our solutions.
Pun intended.
If you look at yeah, exactly. If you look at all of the buckets of the value chain that we serve, starting with, let's say, competitive benchmarking. We have a tool called RepViews that is a AI based tool that allows our customers to go and monitor what their competition is doing. You may say, what does that have to do with sustainability? Well, it allows our customers to produce products that are actually going to be sold and don't end up getting destroyed or in a dump. If you look at the apparel space, there's a statistic out there that says a dump trunk of apparel is destroyed every minute because it's unsold. So between competitive benchmarking tools, between product lifecycle management tools that allow you to understand what products are selling, where they need to go, when they need to be there, how they need to be priced, that all prevents products from being destroyed and sent to the landfill. As you get into the product development side, when you're developing those actual patterns, people may not realize this, but to make a shirt, between a brand and a manufacturer that's actually producing it, there's dozens and dozens of samples that get shipped back and forth between the brand in New York and the factory in China.
Right.
There's the carbon footprint of shipping it back and forth, but then also the material waste itself. A lot of that is being done in 3D, so that helps drive sustainability. When you get to the factory floor itself and actually producing the files for the material to be cut, then it becomes really a material optimization exercise. So we have web-based tools that allow you to nest those patterns together in a way that allows you to get more out of the material. So if you have 10 yards of material and you're getting 10 shirts, we have a tool that makes you get 11. So you're producing more out of the material you have, which helps reduce waste. On the machine side, having the highest technology machines that allow you to cut it in a way that reduces your material waste also drives sustainability, but also the carbon footprint of the machine itself is like electricity usage, things like that. That's all ingrained into the design of our products and drive sustainability. And all of those things, whether it's waste reduction, whether it's reducing sample size, reducing carbon footprint, all of that also has a very meaningful impact to our customers' bottom line. So not only is it the socially conscious thing to do, it helps drive profitability for our customers.
Yeah, I mean that's a theme that I've addressed on the podcast a number of times. It's if you're embarking on an efficiency project, you are de facto embarking on a sustainability project
It,
because the two things go hand in hand. When you are making more with less, that's a sustainability win.
Exactly. And, I'm 10 years into this business now, and 10 years ago, people used to talk about sustainability because it was the cool, trendy thing to talk about. Now they talk about it because one, they have to do it from a bottom line perspective, from an efficiency standpoint.
Yeah.
And two, also the regulatory environment is changing as well. And
Mm.
that is a driving factor behind the
Okay.
addition.
You come into Lectra from a mergers, is that right?
Yeah. So I joined Lectra in 2021 through their acquisition of Gerber Technology. And Gerber and Lectra were the number one and number two technology solutions providers to the markets that I described earlier. And Gerber had gone through 2 rounds of private equity ownership after being a publicly traded company, and Lectra ended up being the right home for it. So the number one and two players in the space, came together, and it's been a very successful and complementary acquisition. So if you look at it geographically, Lectra, based in Paris, France, was very strong in Europe. Gerber was based here in Connecticut. Gerber was very strong in the Americas. We kind of split APAC. From a market segment standpoint, Gerber was a little bit stronger in apparel. Lectra was stronger in automotive. We kind of split the furniture market, and then Gerber had this other industrial business like aerospace and defense. So it's been very, very complementary. And then with Lectra, the acquisitions didn't stop there. I like to say that we've grown since 2021 to be double what we were in 2020. So Lectra is about a $500 million company with 3,000 employees. It was about half of that in 2020. Obviously, Gerber was the big acquisition, but since then, I had mentioned we acquired Textile Genesis, which is a traceability platform. We acquired a CAD company called Gemini. We just acquired this year Launch Metrics, which is a brand management tool for those in the fashion and accessories space. So it's been a build over the last several years through acquisitions, but also Lectra, we're a technology company. And when you look at the benchmark of any big technology company, they put about 10% of their revenues into R&D. So we have the inorganic growth through acquisition, but as a $500 million company, every year we're internally investing over $50 million a year in R&D as well.
Nice, nice. What would have been some, let's say, unexpected lessons you learned from implementing digital technologies in textile manufacturing? And are there any experiences there that shape your approach to innovation?
That's a great question. That's a with the diverse set of markets that we serve, we always run into things that are a little bit unexpected. But one of the things that we really focus on is customer centricity, right? So
Hmm.
we have a team, in the Americas alone, it's about 300 people in our customer success division, and we stay very, very close to the customer. So you know we have a continuous mechanism of feedback that goes back to our product marketing teams, that feeds back into R&D and how we can constantly improve. you know any good, I think, innovation company doesn't necessarily say, hey, we're going to listen to the customers when they tell us exactly what they want, but we want to understand what their pain points are and where
Sure.
their struggles are. And that is what really feeds our innovation. And it's not just about the products. It's not just about a CAD software or a piece of equipment. It's about understanding the process. And a lot of the tools that we've launched over the last year or two, uh, being cloud-based platforms that help our customers manage their process ERP through from ERP order ingestion all the way through production. So it's not, I would say, one lesson. It's just making sure that we stay close to the customer, understanding their processes. On our customer success team, the average tenure of our team is actually 21 years. So we
Wow.
have a lot of street credibility. We have a lot of expertise from an application standpoint that allows us to very effectively share that feedback with our R&D teams.
And apart from just listening to the customers, are you also listening to their machines? Are they connected? Are you getting data back from the machines that you feed into R&D as well?
Oh, absolutely. I was mentioning, the Industry 4.0 journey for us started in 2007 when we first connected the machines to the cloud.
Hmm.
And since then, we've been accumulating all of that data. So, yeah, it allows us to understand usage patterns of the machines that feed R&D, but also really be predictive in maintenance. So, everybody talks about AI, right? Where's AI going? People now are talking about generative AI, but Lectra has been doing machine learning AI since 2007, right? So by the data that we have, let's say if there's a motor in a machine and we see that it's been running at a certain temperature for 3 days, and we know if it runs at that temperature for 5 days, it's going to fail. We'll ship out the part proactively, and people will go, "Hey, you just sent me this motor. Why do I have it?" Well, because we think yours is going to fail. So that's the kind of thing that we've been able to do by having our machines connected for the last 17 years.
Nice, nice, nice. And talking about the likes of on-demand production, how did your experience with on-demand production change your perspective on reducing waste and improving efficiency in manufacturing? Are there pivotal moments that led you to advocate for this approach?
I think it was a shift in consumer trends that allowed us to advocate for this approach. And actually, the jacket that I'm wearing now is a good example of just on demand, made to order. It started as a trend where consumers wanted more personalized, more customized garments,
Hmm.
and that led to the development of our on-demand platform for fashion and also for furniture. Right? If you look at the furniture
Right.
space, more and more furniture is made to order. It's not making 1,000 couches and putting them in containers anymore. It's all being custom. And the on-demand platform that we have in fashion, again, it's very process oriented, allows customers to get measured at a retail store. The clerk or the worker at the retail store can input that into their terminal or into their ERP system. Those measurements get go through the cloud into our CAD software where the patterns are generated and altered based on consumers' actual measurements. The markers are made, and then it's sent over to production. And we've seen that in high fashion goods or in formal wear, but in the Americas where it's pretty cool, and it's also developed a niches in the protective wear. So like fire
Ah,
suits, bulletproof vests, gloves, protective gloves. A lot of those are customized based off of the fit because they have to securely fit in order to be effective. And it's been a little bit of a niche that we've carved out with fashion on demand, here in the U.S. And I think that was kind of a pivot that nobody really expected. You design something for couches and for men's suits, then all of a sudden you're producing firefighter uniforms on it, and it's pretty neat how that evolved.
sure, sure, sure. And you mentioned the transparency platform that you guys bought 2 years ago, I think you mentioned. What was the moment that made you realize the importance of transparency and accountability in production? Have these values influenced the practices you've implemented?
Yeah, there's there's the internal view of it, and then there's the external view of it. So internally, CSR has been ingrained in our DNA for the last 50 years, but it's certainly become, I think, more prevalent as the world has been talking about it over the last several years. As a publicly traded French company, we joke that our financial report has to be this thick, but our CSR report has to be that thick now. And so there was that aspect of it. But when you look at the apparel space, we're dealing with the biggest fashion brands and apparel manufacturers in the world, and they've been talking about it because they're getting a lot of regulatory pressure, whether it's Jinping cotton coming in, whether it's making sure that their products are made in factories that use responsible labor and have good labor practices, having the visibility and how that cascades down from the field where the cotton is procured, through the textile mills where the material is woven, through the factory floor, through the sewing process, back to the distributor. They have a need for it from a social responsibility standpoint, but also being able to show customers, hey, I got this from the right place. You wouldn't believe the apparel manufacturers that we talk to and say, I have millions of dollars of inventory being held up at the border because I can't justify where it came from, and I can't prove that I sourced it responsibly. So, as that environment has evolved, that led to the acquisition of Textile Genesis.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah. On the resource efficiency front, can you recall a specific instance where improving resource efficiency led to unexpected benefits for your team or your company or your customers even?
Yeah, actually. So we have a customer, and there's some good videos out there called Leisure Creations. Leisure Creations, you wouldn't believe how big of a business this is. Does umbrellas for resorts and hotels around the world,
Okay.
and it's a
Handheld umbrellas or the kind of ones you sit under or
no,
both?
the kind that you see like next to the lounge chair. So when you have
Right.
your pina colada by the pool and you're trying to avoid the sun and not get cooked. Those umbrellas, and
Okay.
it's all custom, right? Whether it's Marriott or a Sandals resort or whatever resort it is, they all have their own colors, their own brand scheme. So it's all made to order, and they were all manual from a pattern generation standpoint, from a hand cutting standpoint, and they went from manual, like driving a 1970 Ford, to two furniture on demand production platforms implemented into their workflow. So they went from like a Ford to a Ferrari like that, and they were able to essentially triple their production output in the same amount of time, going from manual to on demand processes using the automation.
And whatever about the time they saved, were they also saving material?
Well, yeah, the material savings alone justified the ROI of the machines. I mean, it was a pretty significant investment, right? You're looking for two machines around seven figures, and to have a ROI be less than a year on material savings alone is pretty
Wow.
wild.
Wow. That's impressive. All right. Yep. 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 And what about AI? Because that's the topic du jour these days. Have you, I mean, you mentioned you've been using it since 2007, but How did your initial encounters with AI in textile manufacturing transform your understanding of its potential? And are there any pivotal moments or challenges which helped you realize the full scope of AI's impact?
Sure. When you look at the machine learning AI that we've been leveraging since 2017, and you look at how I mentioned we're trying to understand customers' processes and pain points, downtime for a customer on the production floor, you know, one 1 hour of downtime in a high production environment could represent hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost revenue.
Sure.
So being able to leverage the machine learning AI to perform that predictive maintenance just ended up providing a tremendous amount of value to our customers. And you take a look back and you say, okay, well, if the machine learning AI can provide that much value, what's the next step? And that actually led to the acquisition of RepViews, which is an AI based competitive intelligence platform. So if you're, let's say you're a outerwear company, right, or for mountain hiking gear, and the customers are like LL Bean. These are our customers, but brands in the space.
Sure.
LL Bean, REI, Patagonia, Columbia, right? If you're one of those four brands and you want to say, okay, what are quarter zip fleece pullovers going for? What are hiking pants or hiking shoes going for? What's the assortment? What sizes? What colors are being offered? Where are they being stationed? What kind of discounting or pricing strategies do they have? We leverage AI to pull all that information from the internet and display it to our customers in a way that provides actionable information for them to manage their assortment of their portfolio. When you look at our R&D staff, we have 500 people dedicated to R&D. A majority of them are working on software solutions, all of which, the next evolutions will have some AI embedded into it.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. And I got to think consumer desires are shifting as always, but more recently, there's more of a desire for sustainability, for only buying from firms who seem to who seem to be working with a purpose. Can you share a time when adapting to changing consumer desires posed a significant challenge? Or can you talk about learning from overcoming such an obstacle, and has it informed your current strategies?
Sure. I go back to the on-demand piece, right? The on-demand platforms that we launched were a result of shifting consumer trends for more customized, more tailored goods. I think it was really ahead of its time, quite honestly. So, knowing that the process of producing a one-off, if you have a factory that's doing 100 jackets an hour and they're the same patterns, 4 different sizes, to go and do a 50 tailored fit long jacket for a order quantity of one is very, very difficult. So
Hmm.
understanding the difficulty that the customers had in shifting from mass production to on demand led us to the development of the fashion on demand platform. And again, that was really a product of the shifting consumer needs. And on the furniture side, I had mentioned the furniture on demand platform. I always joke as a consumer myself, not just being behind the scenes in the business, but as a consumer myself, you get your first apartment, you go and you buy at like a job lot, you buy your furniture at like a job lot, and it's kind of mass produced. And hey, maybe I'll get 5 years out of it. Then you go into your next house, you get a little bit nicer, and then it becomes more affordable, but tailor made to what you need. As a husband and father of 2 young girls, 2 dogs, we have very specific needs of durability, reliability, but we also want it to look nice and fit within the form of our home. So having something that's affordable, customized, come together to be something that we could acquire and readily order without having a crazy lead time, we allow our customers to facilitate that for their customers.
Sure, sure, sure. What about shifting customer demands for materials? And if I'm asking this, it's because you mentioned the furniture section, and we're seeing now, for example, in automobiles, a lot more automobiles have the likes of vegan leather, and we're seeing
Yeah.
more demands for kind of organic cotton and, all these kind of things. Does that impact you at all, or is that something that your
Oh,
customers worry about?
no, it absolutely impacts us because we have to be able to manage our portfolio to accommodate those different types of materials. The vegan leather one is a great example. So if you look at our product portfolio, we have, I think, what's the industry standard for leather cutting CAD CAM machines in the Versailles. And we've sold those to furniture companies, to automotive companies for over 10 years. As vegan leather, which is really it's just synthetic, right? Synthetic
Sure.
material that comes together and looks like leather. Um, it's expensive. People don't realize how expensive that material is, right? It's going into Mercedes, it's going into Volvos, it's going into higher end cars, and it's got to look nice, it's got to be durable and reliable like leather, even though it's synthetic, but it's expensive.
Mhm.
So, in 2019, we launched a product called the IP series for automotive cutting that allows the material to be cut in a way that reduces the space in between the patterns. And that drives material savings for our customers. But vegan leather or that synthetic material can be very, very difficult to cut at those, it's called a buffer, the space in between parts, at low buffers.
Sure.
But the IP was specifically designed to do that, to drive material savings while still maintaining and improving efficiency from a throughput perspective from our customers. So, you talk about industry trends. We saw the kind of the vegan leather thing coming. We knew that material was expensive. We designed the machine to really, and all other materials too, obviously,
Hmm.
but vegan leather is expensive and it's difficult to cut.
Interesting. Nice. Okay. And where to next? I mean, we've talked about the rise in automation, in Industry 4 technologies, in AI. You know, has that finished? Are we going on to the next thing, or are we just getting more of that? Or where do you see the trends going in the industry?
The whether it's executives in the apparel space, in the furniture space, or automotive, or other industrial markets, there's a term that I hear a lot, and it's digital thread. It's the digital thread. It's the passing of data through, and again, no pun intended, but it's the passing of data through all the different processes that they undertake within their value stream.
Sure.
So for us, being able to manage that digital thread while maintaining the fidelity of the information is paramount to what we do, right? It's not just a piece of equipment, it's not just a piece of software, it's managing that process and tying it all together and using our platform of connectivity to do that. So, what's next? I think we'll continue to enhance the tools that we have. We'll leverage artificial intelligence as our product evolves, but figuring out what other areas of the value stream for the markets that we serve where we can help manage that digital thread, I think that's what's next for Lectra.
Okay. Great. Great. We're coming towards the end of the podcast now, Lenny. Is there any question I haven't asked that you wish I had, or any aspect of this we haven't touched on that you think it's important for people to think about?
I think we covered a lot in the half hour that we had, Tom. I hope I answered the questions and shared some good information with your listeners, and showed how sustainability is really ingrained into everything that Lectra does, and all the products that we offer and the markets that we serve, and also how we manage our business internally.
Great. Lenny, if people would like to know more about yourself or any of the things we discussed in the podcast today, where would you have me direct them?
I would direct them to lectra.com. You could follow us on LinkedIn. You could follow us on Facebook. You can connect with me directly at LinkedIn under Lenny Marano, and look forward to hopefully getting some good communications from your listeners, Tom.
Fantastic. Great. Lenny, that's been really interesting. Thanks a million for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Tom. It's been a pleasure.